Christian Horner could be going to Aston Martin as early as April of 2026, bringing the Horner-Newey dream team back together and potentially giving us another dominant team in F1. But will it happen, and why is it happening? This video is brought to you by checkmythumbnail.com, the analysis tool for YouTubers by YouTubers. Try it free today. So at time of recording, nothing about Horner or Aston Martin has been confirmed, other than that we're pretty sure that Andy Cowell has been removed as CEO or is stepping down as CEO at the end of the season. And that reporting is pretty strong. Now, knowing my luck, by the time you're seeing this, Horner will already be in his place or something else will have happened that completely contradicts this. But nonetheless, we'll do what we do best on this channel and speculate based on what I've heard. So, the key facts here are that Andy Cowell has been removed or will be removed from his station as CEO and team principal at the end of the season after only taking up that role late last year or early last year, if I remember correctly. And Aston are doing with him what they do with most of the people they move around. Instead of firing them, they move them to another department, try and keep them as long as possible to ream out their gardening leave so they can't go anywhere else. Although in this particular situation, it could be a long-term one for Andy Cowell, as he has been moved to working with the integration team or leading the integration team between Honda and Aston Martin. Now that is in itself a very shrewd move, albeit one that I don't think he probably put himself up for. Maybe he did, who knows? But what that means is he's going to be working with Honda and the Aston Martin team in order to ensure that the engine and the car itself work together in harmony and that whole project comes together. And given that he was the lead guy at HPP for the 2014 Mercedes engine, that seems like a pretty damn good role and probably a place he should have been in the first place, although I'm guessing there's a reason he wasn't, in that he didn't want to take that kind of role. Anyway, regardless, this means a seat has opened up as team principal and CEO of Aston Martin. And what I have confirmed is that Aston Martin have actually talked to Horner. It's not just me confirming this either. I think the race reported it earlier today. So from who I'm hearing and from who the race is hearing, I think it's pretty solid that there has been talks going on, and I think either way, why wouldn't there be? And they're also talking to Andreas Seidel. Now, I'm going to talk about Horner first because it makes the most sense, because Horner is looking for a couple of things. One, he's looking for a team that he can see as a long-term project, and his primary target is to get a stake in a team so that he's not just working for someone else, so that he has a real viable amount of control within a team. Two, he's obviously looking for a long-term project, something he can really sink his teeth into, and something that, let's be honest here, he can eventually beat Red Bull with, which I'm sure is in the back of his mind. And three, looking for a place where eventually he could set up some sort of works team to have a full and complete control over the entire package. Now, that last part I think is the least important, but it makes Aston a very viable project for him, given that they have Honda there already. It's going to be a full works team, and he's just gotten done with working with Honda anyway, so all of it comes together. As for the stake in the team, I don't think that's going to be an issue either, because Lawrence Stroll is very much like a Dietrich in that he likes to put people in place, maybe a lot more controlling. He likes to put the right people in place and basically empower them with blank checks to do whatever they need. And I think that's why this could work so well. Because if Horner can come in with even like less than half of the funding that he was expected or rumored to have from what we were talking about the last time, he could buy at least 20% of that team. It'd be around $600 million, something that he could do if he has that backing. So he could come in and potentially buy up 33%. And I think Lawrence Stroll would probably be up for this, given it's the perfect situation to bring Horner in, give him control, and basically whatever Horner says goes. Because if he says you're not going to win with this package, then Lawrence will know that that's the truth. This is a guy who's actually done it before, whereas Andy Cowell hasn't. Andy Cowell has done it for the engine, but not for the team as a whole. That was Ross Brawn and Toto Wolff, essentially. So getting someone like Horner in would be the ideal situation, because you're getting that whole thing together. Because on top of him coming in and taking over, having control basically as well for Lawrence, that's probably an upside too. One, he gets to cash out a little bit and burn some of his downside. But two, having someone like Horner in who actually has some skin in the game, a stake in the game, means you're going to get someone who is hyper motivated, although Horner already is, let's be honest. So I think all of that works out. But I think one of the other sides to this, the main side to this as well, is the fact that obviously you've got that Horner-Newey dream team. The two work very well together, and Horner knows very well what Newey needs and when he needs it. And if Newey asks for something, there's not going to be any problems there. Horner will just fight to the teeth. Horner will just fight to the bitter end to get whatever Newey needs. Not that, again, there'll be any pushing back on that. So, and I think that could be one of the main reasons, because I believe, again, what the race reported on today was that there were some creative differences between Newey and Andy Kell. And I guess, again, they come from two very different backgrounds and ways of working. So that could very well be the case. Who knows? It could be these internal problems, and this is kind of a quick step. Now, before I jump onto Seidel as well, the last thing I'll say on Horner is I know there's probably a lot of you who will jump to the comments and say Horner's not going to work with Newey because that, Newey left Red Bull because of Horner. I have explained this before, but I think that's kind of a simplification of what actually happened. Yes, Newey had some problems with Horner because it was his actions, allegedly, that caused the problems that ended with Newey leaving. However, from my understanding and everything I've heard from kind of skulking around, talking to people I know in the paddock and the Red Bull and so on, a lot of it was actually just to do with the noise afterward. It was just a consistent infighting, political battles, the media coverage, Horner having to fight back in the media, Helmut Marko saying things, Jos saying things, the board saying things, just this constant power struggle within. And then, the Vache stuff and so on getting brought up, which Horner didn't help with either. But, essentially, he got sick and tired of that. Newey has always been the guy that just wants to work quietly in the background. He loves the engineering. So that makes sense. He got sick of all the politics and left. On top of that, since Horner has left and since Newey has left, the two of them have still been hanging out. They still are family friends, and they've gone to concerts together, all these different things. So from everything I understand, it was the politics and stuff and the personal stuff. Any personal issues they had have been resolved, essentially. So working together wouldn't be an issue, especially because the two of them know how to leave each other alone. So I think it's perfect. So that's what it sounds like. I genuinely think if Aston Martin can pull this off, they will basically set themselves up to be champions in the next 3 or 4 seasons because they have everything else they need. And I think the biggest unknowns has been like, okay, Newey should be able to lead the technical side. That will take 2 or 3 seasons. I don't think it's going to be 2026. Would be incredible if Alonso's fighting for a title next year, but I don't think it will be. But the unknown has been, well, as much as Andy Kell is brilliant, and I have huge respect for him, especially for what he did with Mercedes and the engine, he's never led a team. And leading a team takes a lot of horsepower in terms of figuring all the issues out. And it's a thing that a lot of people struggle to do, especially when you've got like a board and management behind you. You don't actually own the team. So, Zach's been very good at this, Toto's been very good at this, and Horner was essentially left alone by Dietrich and worked well. So, I think having Horner coming in makes sense because he'll be the only one who can take a stake in the team and kind of push away in a way that Andy Kell couldn't. Andy Kell would always have to explain himself in a way that Horner wouldn't. The other option is Andreas Seidel. Honestly, I have to say, if they hire Andreas Seidel, I'm going to be quite worried about the path that Aston Martin are going on, because I would much prefer to give Andy Kell a few years to get on top of it, to deal with Newey and so on. It's just a step down. I think Andreas Seidel is a brilliant mid-team manager, but I think if you're going to bring Andreas Seidel in, you kind of might as well have kept Zafnauer all this time, because you're bringing in someone who has twice now brought a team kind of, upwards. Well, once now, sorry, but brought a team upwards. I'll explain what I mean properly. He has brought a team, forward a little bit, fixed some issues and so on. And he's very good at kind of getting, say, McLaren, for example, up to the top of the midfield, right? He went to Sauber, he fixed some of their issues. But in both of those cases, he was removed because the fit wasn't right to get to the front. And if you look at both of those situations, you've got McLaren where he left and they are now constructors champions under Stella. And then at Sauber, he left, and Mattia Binotto very quickly has worked with Jonathan Wheatley to kind of turn things around and get them on the right path. So the problem is that I don't want to say that's all Andreas Seidel's fault, because there's more to this. Like, things are very, very complicated in Formula One. But realistically, this is a guy who has twice now not managed to bring a midfield team forward. He has managed to do some great work from 2019 to 2022, the end of it, with McLaren, bringing that from a really poor team to one that was quite strong by the end. But there clearly was a lack of enthusiasm about whether he could get them over the finish line. And it was clearly the same with Audi and Sauber. And even with Audi and Sauber, there was just a lot of not making steps. So I just don't think, if you're Aston Martin and you're willing to get Newey in the way that you did, and you're willing to spend all of this money and everything to do what you did, I think giving 30% of that to just get it over the line to Horner, that makes sense to me. Because, at the end of the day, worst case scenario, you sell it out afterwards. So, yeah, I don't think if they hire Seidel, I'll be very enthusiastic about where they're going. And I would genuinely be surprised if that's what Newey backs as well. But who knows? Like, maybe there's a reason why Seidel's on the cards. They also apparently talked to Mattia as well, which again, I think makes sense to get you up the line a little bit. But I think Horner's the clear choice here. And if they manage to hire Horner, it's going to be brilliant. The last thing I'll say on this is that I think if Horner goes there, the idea of Max going to Aston Martin is pretty much out the window going forward, because I think there is not, any way in hell that Horner brings Max over. And the reason for that is not Max. I think Horner, huge respect for Max. Like, Max, he treated like his kid. He was like, not maybe like Daniel Ricciardo, but, huge respect for Verstappen. Obviously, he loves having that one driver like Vettel and then Verstappen who can fight for it. They went to championships together and so on. But I think essentially, from everything I understand of this, Horner very much fell out with Jos and Helmut Marko by the end, and they sided with the board. And that's where the falling out basically started. There was a political turmoil after the Porsche thing fell through, and then the board and Helmut and Jos started moving things around. And basically, Max is like a package. So Jos comes over. And Jos is the type of guy who's not going to stay quiet in the back. And therefore, for Horner, like, it's his team. So he's not going to want Jos coming in. So I just think that's not going to happen. Although, I guess you could argue that if it is his team and he's got complete control of it, like 30% and controlling, votes and whatever, then I guess he could bring him over and just tell Jos to shut up. But I just, you know what I mean? I don't think it's going to happen. I think there's too much there. And also, I guess for that to happen, you're talking 27, 28. I guess you could bring a Russell in. You might have, if Lando or Piastri wins this season, which, we'll talk about soon, you could have a situation where he gets one of those guys instead, and the car is the most important thing anyway. You don't have a winning car, the driver doesn't really matter. So yeah, I don't see Max going there, but let's see. By the time I publish this, we may have an answer. I think this is going to develop pretty quickly. But for those of you wondering, the last thing I'll say is that Horner can join after, I believe, the first 3 races of the season. And I thought Alpine would be the way to go, but if he can get some shares, even 20% in Aston, I think it's a no-brainer for Horner. It's a much better starting point than Alpine to get to the top. So it's exciting stuff. Subscribe. Oh, and before you go, if you enjoy automotive, please check out my Automotive channel, The Car Nerd. I've revived it and I'm just trying to get to 1,000 subscribers. So if you enjoy it at all, please head over there and subscribe. It really helped me out. Thank you.